Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 337. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss The Kid, or as it is otherwise known as Disney's The Kid, as it celebrates its 25th anniversary.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because there is a reason for them calling it Disney's The Kid. And it's so funny because I remember that so vividly from seeing the trailer. You know, it was movie trailer guy, Disney's The Kid.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because Charlie Chaplin did a film called The Kid. So because they would not hand over the rights to the title and Disney didn't want a copyright infringement, this is how they're differentiating the two, which still doesn't help me not constantly conflate this with First Kid, especially because we're celebrating the 25th anniversary right around the 4th of July, which would make sense for them to put out a film about a kid in the White House.
Yeah, but there is literally nothing other than kid being in the title. There couldn't be two more different films than Disney's The Kid and The First Kid. Speaking of firsts, was this the first time you had seen this film?
I think that should be fairly obvious at this point.
Yeah, this is one that I think for the exact reason you just talked about, I've always known about this film. It's been one that I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, but I've never sat to watch it. And it's not due to, like, lack of interest in Bruce Willis. I just think, year 2000, I'm 14 years old, and this felt like, honestly, without knowing anything about it, I just thought that this was like kind of Disney's version of Radio Flyer. So I thought this is a coming of age film about a young kid and his dad, and the dad is trying to be a kid again. Like, honestly, that's what I thought this was about. So it was just like, yeah, I love Bruce Willis, but this is just a movie that is not for me. And as it turns out, I could not have been more wrong about my assumptions.
Well, this is going to make for a very interesting conversation because I, too, thought of a comp that stood out to me like a sore thumb as I was watching it, but we're going to get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, well, was this film worth the 25-year wait? Is this something that 25 years later you look back on and you think, you know what, I could have enjoyed this at my age now, at the age of 14, and perhaps as a 7 or 8-year-old, much as the age of the young man in this movie was portrayed. That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Russ Duritz is an image consultant who lacks a soft side despite being highly successful. He has spotty relationships with his father as well as his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Amy. One day, he starts seeing a young boy in a red jacket at and around his home. He also finds a toy plane outside his door, which he assumes that his father had brought over. He chases the boy to a local Skyway diner where he disappears along with the diner, so he assumes that he is hallucinating. After seeing the kid again, he learns that the young man is actually himself. His younger self is approaching his 8th birthday and is disappointed to see that his older self is not married and does not have his dream dog, Chester, despite turning 40 in just a few days. When his assistant, Janet, confirms that she can see Rusty, the young boy, It proves that Russ is not hallucinating, and it leaves Russ and Rusty confused as to how he got there and how to send him back. Just when he thinks Rusty has disappeared, he appears again at a breakfast meeting where he meets Amy, who believes that Rusty is Russ's nephew. After reappearing at the Skyway Diner, and after the diner reappears as well, Rusty vents about how he is bullied at school, so Russ believes that he is there to learn to defend himself. So Russ introduces him to Kenny, a client and a champion boxer who shows Rusty how to fight. Amy believes that Rusty is in fact Russ's son, and that he's been lying about this the whole time, so they have to come clean and tell her what is happening. Russ tells her that seeing Rusty reminds him of the awful memories that he has chosen to forget. At Kenny's wedding the next day, Rusty proposes to Amy on Russ's behalf, leading to her reconsidering a future with Russ until she sees a publicity stunt on air on ESPN that she had believed had been a destroyed tape. It was a tape that they shot earlier. Russ had told her they had destroyed it and that he was not going to use it for his shisty client. Rusty tells Russ that they need to change, and they discuss their future and how with hard work they become professionally successful. Russ and Rusty begin to help each other by improving the current versions of themselves, both the 40-year-old and the 8-year-old. Rusty tells Russ about how his former friend is now friends with bullies, and that they are really mean to animals, specifically a 3-legged dog named Tripod. Russ realizes that Rusty has arrived so that Russ can help him change the events of his past, one of the worst being a fight on his 8th birthday against a bully named Vince. Russ warns that the event will happen and tells Rusty to remember Kenny's boxing lesson. This now sends them back to the 1960s. At recess, Vince and his cronies have Tripod tied up with firecrackers around his neck. Previously, Rusty lost the fight and Tripod perishes. However, this time, Rusty wins, saves Tripod, and saves his reputation, at least slightly. Rusty is excited and thinks that everything will get better, but Russ warns that it is about to get much worse. Their mother arrives at school to retrieve Rusty from the principal's office, infuriating his father, who scolds Rusty for his mother having to leave the home. It is then that Rusty learns that his mother is dying and is scolded more by his father, who tells him to grow up and stop crying, all while Russ watches in the distance. He tells Rusty that his mother will pass away before his next birthday, but tells him that he isn't responsible for it, all while he cries for the first time since that day. At the diner that night, they see a dog named Chester, and they run outside to see that a future elder version of themselves has ended up as a pilot, which was their dream, and he is now married to Amy, and they have a family. The older Russ admits that he orchestrated the entire event to try and help his 39-year-old self. He leaves on his plane, Rusty and the diner disappear, and Russ travels back to present day, where he makes amends with Janet, his father, and Amy.
So, full disclosure, I really didn't like it the first time I watched.
Right.
I warmed up a little bit more on the second viewing, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think this is going to make for one of those conversations where we're really not on the same page, which is always a more interesting discussion. But I'm excited to see how this is going to play out.
And I'll cast this net out there. Yes. Also, you set the bar the way that you didn't tell me the plot. You set the bar for this movie almost unthinkably low. When I came home from work the night that you watched it, because you watched it before I did.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, my God, this is going to be one of the worst films that we've ever reviewed. And then when you had said to me, I think it was the next morning, you had said to me, well, this might be like Old Dogs for you. It was a movie you really didn't like, Old Dogs. It was a movie that I liked quite a bit. Not without its flaws. We both admitted that there were story problems. But I liked it a lot more than you did. So I went in to the first viewing, with like a much calmer demeanor. And we got through the first viewing and I thought to myself, is the movie that good because it's that good? Or is it that good because I'm relieved that it's not that bad? So I was excited to sit and watch it the second time through for the purpose of taking notes and really taking it in for what it was. So let's go right to the beginning. I love the score. I think the score and the way that they open this film, it feels very much late 90s, early 2000s Disney.
It feels very Rocketeer at some points, which I did like. It also felt and looked like maybe we were recycling some Ron Miller era footage, because we all know he loves a helicopter chase or a plane in his films. So it's very possible we had these, aerial POV shots, stock footage, because it looks so grainy. And I mean, that's not a knock against it. I love like some grainy old footage. But it looks very different from the shots where it goes over Santa Monica Pier, which I think were filmed specifically for the movie.
With the red plane.
Yeah. Getting out of the credits and into the film, though, this setup is so heavy-handed, but I will give it that it's so well done, because you know who this guy is right away. He is work obsessed and he's a total jerk. But the humor where he's trying to make his flight and the woman in front of him, at first when we watched it, I was like, well, that's it. My favorite character is gone 30 seconds into this movie, because she's like, I like to keep my change in my little teddy bear change part. Like, she's just doing everything to hold him up. And he's like, you know what? I got it. I got hers. I got mine. We just need to go. And then, it's all kind of a montage of the people that he's interacting with on his flight to get to his client, because he's an image consultant, which is what I guess back in the day they would have called a PR specialist now. Like, we know it as when a celebrity does something very horrible publicly and then they lay low for a couple of that's the difference. Now they'll lay low for a couple of months or even years, and then they'll do a big comeback. Back in the day, it was immediate. It was, you needed a statement right away, which does happen now. But I feel like they were quicker to spin it instead of letting it breathe.
Which is funny because back in the late 90s and early 2000s, of course, there was no social media. So it was kind of easier to disappear back then.
And you didn't, that's the thing. You made the statement for print media, and it wasn't like you had to take to your socials and say something personally in any given situation.
Yeah, there was no TMZ. You weren't getting chased down by the paparazzi. Well, no, you were getting chased down by the paparazzi. But it was more the paparazzi was trying to, get photographs of you doing something scandalous. They didn't care about what you had to say. I love his introduction. You're right. You know exactly who he is. She's going on about her little change purse teddy bear, and he has two great lines. Well, first he goes, yeah, that's almost interesting. And I laugh hysterically when he said that. And then he goes, let me pay for everything. And she's like, oh, that's so nice of you to do for me. He goes, I didn't do it for you. And then he moves on because he's trying to pick. What he's doing is he's basically at a magazine rack, and he's trying to get his magazines, and she's trying to get her candy for her flight, and he's just like, I just want to go. I just got to make my flight. I thought that was such a good line, and a lot of that gets washed away though when you see him interact with his first client.
Exactly. This was the exact moment that I knew that you and I were going to be on two different pages, because when you laughed at that, I was like, oh, this is totally your humor. And like,
because it's something I would say to somebody if I'm being honest.
no,
with you.
and I'm getting stressed out because he's being such a jerk. And then he continues to double down on it with almost every other interaction that he has. But this is where, from, you know, a screenwriting standpoint, I do appreciate how good the setup is, because while his job is interesting, Russ doesn't actually care about helping any of these people. He only cares about being what he defines as successful.
Right.
And then I really like the moment where he meets the news anchor on the plane. She's flying back to LA, or he's flying back to LA. She is flying out to LA for the first time because she just got a new job as a news anchor. And she's like trying to get a read. And she's like, what's your opinion of me? Because she wants to fit in, but he's looking at this as, I'm not giving you free advice. But then he kind of like, he does sort of tear into her a little bit, because she's like this Southern belle, and he's like, your hair's too high, and I think he says your eyebrows are too, like, he really
Eyebrows
goes
are too dark,
after
your
her.
nails are too long.
Yeah, he really goes after her looks, but he does tell her, she's like, oh, should I get rid of the y'all? Is that too specific of a dialect? And he's like, no, keep that. He's like, you'll get promoted in 6 months. And he's like, if you smile when you say it, you'll get...
You'll be famous in 12.
Yeah. So it's like, that kind of establishes, it's like, okay, he may be a jerk, but like, he does know what he's talking about, because he does genuinely give her some good advice. And it's not just because she's a pretty face, you know?
Right, because he says that's your trademark. Don't lose that. And if you think about it, what he's saying is not necessarily incorrect, you know, because she's got that kind of big... I'm not going to say poofy hair, but she's got...
a coif.
Yeah, she's got very big hair, which in the South, even to this day, is a little bit more the style than Los Angeles, right? So in
Yes.
LA, I mean, she's asking a
good
legitimate question, and is it a personal attack against her? It sort of is, because he's laundry listing all of the things that are wrong. But to fit into LA, he's not factually incorrect, but you're right. He saves himself by saying the y'all is your trademark, don't lose it. And there's a callback to it later on, which we'll get to. It's just, and I understand when he's where he basically says, like, you think that the cosmic forces put us together so that I could give you advice that I charge people for. But he gives it to her under the guise of, I just want to rest and enjoy my flight. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to talk to anybody. If I do this, will you just leave me alone for the rest of the flight? And he gives it to her, and she kind of like does the zip the lip thing, like with her hand motion. And he finishes, and like that could have been enough. And then he goes, now will you please just shut up? And I'm like, she already agreed that she's not going to say anything else. Like, you don't need that line, just like you didn't need the wambulance line when he meets his first client. And I thought that was like kind of cringy. Like, I understand why, by the end of the movie, I understand why he says it, but it doesn't necessarily become an ongoing bit. He does it one more time. I'm wondering if something ended up on the cutting room floor where that was supposed to be like one of his things that he did, but it didn't do it. It made him seem very childish when he's not. He's just sort of rude to people, and all of that kind of gets fleshed out later on in the movie. But all of that to be said, I thought that the scene worked. And then he gets back to LA, and I understand you're supposed to sort of dislike him. And by the end, I have a comparable as to what I think that this very much is. You make him almost too dislikable by the time he lands. Of course, he's mistreating his assistant. We've seen this in every 90s movie where you were a lawyer or a banker, especially if it were a comedy. But they sort of double down on this when he has the interactions with both his father and Amy.
Right, because his father shows up at the office because he's moving out of their childhood home, we're led to believe, or one of the childhood homes, as we're about to find out. And Russ is like, well, I sent you a check. Didn't you get the money? And he's, because he doesn't have a great relationship with him, and that's how he handles things. It's, I sent you money to cover it. And the
right,
dad's
to cover
like,
the moving costs.
exactly, because he doesn't want to go and physically have to lift things himself. He'd rather pay someone to do it and also not have to deal with his dad. He's being truly horrible to his father, but it's almost worth it because of Janet's delivery to get him out of this scene. He tells her before he goes in to see his father, come in 5 minutes, tell me I have an important meeting that I need to get to. So we're going to talk about the cast, but it's important to mention that Janet is played by Lily Tomlin. Anyone else would not have the dry delivery that it takes to make this line so funny. She's like, there is a crowd of people clamoring to get your attention. Like, it's just so brilliant and so funny. That's where I was like, okay, maybe there is a little bit of a redemption for this film. And that's the humor that I sort of gravitated to. Any moments that I laughed were all because of Janet's character. She is truly my favorite character in this movie, not Change Purse Lady.
I would agree. I would agree with you. I think she is one of the best characters in the film. Let's talk about, he goes on this dinner date with Amy. Amy works for him. Amy is his on-again, off-again girlfriend.
Well, okay. See, I'm glad you bring that up because before we get to the dinner, I think on-again, off-again girlfriend is reading into something that's not actually there. I think they have a very confusing dynamic because before they do dinner, he has to go address a PR crisis. This was actually brilliant, I thought. You had the owner of a baseball stadium who just had the new stadium built based on a pledge that he was also going to be offering a camp for underprivileged kids.
Yeah, 5% of the ticket sales were going to fund the camp because the stadium got built with taxpayer dollars, which is incredibly, this still happens to this day.
Exactly. No, I love how relatable it was. And they released pictures of said camp, which didn't actually exist. So now he's got to go do this PR spin. And he really lays it on thick as far as a PR stunt. But before they go into this meeting, she's just like, how are you? Ask me how I am. So you do get this sense of they have some sort of a relationship where she's not just his assistant who's just starting out and going to yes him and do everything that he says. She's trying to humanize him. So when they do have the dinner scene, I'm like, okay, she is trying to better him. There is sort of a relationship here that exists outside of the workplace, but he's just so mean and so awful to her. I mean, yes, we've seen him be awful to everybody that's in his life and passersby during the day. But where I'm going with all of this is that I don't buy the on again, off again, because I don't understand how she would have stayed the first time when he's so cruel to her. I mean, he goes so deep in attacking her personality when, she's looking at the moon, and like, this is the part in any rom-com where it sort of makes you fall in love with the leading lady because she's just being like charming and, enchanted with something so simple, and he levels her because of it.
I mean, he flat out calls her stupid.
Yeah, it's awful.
It's overly cruel. And it was at this point upon first watch that I went, oh, now I see where the movie's going to take a nosedive. He is so mean for the sake of mean, and this almost seems unmotivated. It seems mean and cruel for the sake of conflict.
It's too personal.
Correct. It doesn't really make sense.
It would if his objective was to permanently end this relationship. But he just assumes that this is all going to work out because they are still working together. They still have to interact. So he knows he's going to see her. I mean, it clearly establishes that he takes her for granted. But like, we knew that already.
Right. Something else, I know this sounds really dumb and trivial. He gets home, They've had dinner, and we know the whole time he had that tape. All of these kids that he got were pieing the owner of the baseball team, and they were going to use that to be like, "Oh, kids love me, ha ha ha." And that's why he was so tactful with get me this kind of kid, this kind of kid, this kind of kid, because he's thinking on the fly of how many demographics can I check off in my box of appealing to.
Yes.
And when he throws the tape away, we know he's going to go get that tape when she's not there, right?
He tries to make her go get it because he's in a nice suit.
So he gets home. This is the first time he sees Rusty on the bike. And Rusty kind of just like cruises through the driveway and then we don't see him again. He gets on the phone with Janet. It's 3:00 in the morning. Yep. And he's making himself a smoothie. I know this sounds so trivial. I care less about him calling Janet 3:00 in the morning and more about he made a smoothie that he didn't actually drink just to go to bed. Because I buy that he would call her at 3:00 in the morning.
Oh, for sure. There was also the first time through a part of me that thought that he was up at 3:00 in the morning because, this is like, I'm thinking specifically about Entourage and
yes.
Ari's character. He was always up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get ahead of the day on everyone else. But also when you're in a job like this too, and you're in LA, you're 3 hours behind. Like New York has started by now. So if you want to stay ahead, you have to operate on East Coast hours, even if you are on the West Coast.
Right. But instead he goes to bed and then he says to Janet, I don't want to talk to you or anybody else for the next 3 hours.
She's like, same.
Yeah. So he gets woken up. He hears a noise. He finds the airplane outside his door. He assumes that it's his father that has retrieved one of his childhood toys from the attic. He gets back into bed. He hears the noise again. He sees Rusty, and he chases him down. Through an airfield. They crawl through a fence. There's a diner in the middle of the airfield, which seems very convenient. He gets into the diner, the kid has disappeared, and then the diner disappears. And this is where the movie starts to really take a shift.
My big question was, how does Rusty know where to go? Because he's out of time, and I don't mean out of time like in a rush. I mean he's out of his timeline. He's out of place, and it's not like he's just taking all of these turns to try and escape the car. Like it would have been different. And I don't know if this was the acting or the direction, maybe column A, column B, if he was looking behind him and like, oh no, he's right on my and then like made decisions to start dodging and weaving. Like it just seemed like he knew to go to the airfield, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
See, and I thought it makes total sense because we find out later that Rusty wanted to be a pilot growing up, especially when he was a kid. That's what he thought he was going to be. We know he gets bullied. We know his mother later passes away. We know that his father is as verbally abusive as he grows up to be, and that gets fleshed out later as well, right? I get the feeling that the airport was always just his safe place, and because he wasn't hanging out with anybody, he was always by himself. He just knew back streets, he knew back roads, he knew how to get there, he knew how to sneak. I'm assuming it's not the first time he snuck out there either. Maybe that's an overthink, but I sort of assumed that it went without saying.
But I think I have an overthink because he would know how to get to the airfield from his house where he lives presently. He's never been to grown-up Russ's house. He has no idea where he is. And I bought it when I thought that he was orchestrating this whole thing and like he knew why he was sent to his adult self. Once it's revealed later on that it's 70-year-old Russ that is orchestrating this whole thing, you needed a beat of Rusty being just as confused as Russ is. By the way, I love the distinction that he went by Rusty when he was younger because it's so much easier to explain it now.
Yeah. So, let's fast forward to the next time we see the two of them together. Russ is at home. He's watching Larry King live. One of his clients is on TV in what I believe was a cheating scandal, and he's completely bombing the interview with Larry King. And he's on the phone with Janet, and he says, why won't he just listen to me? Why won't he just do what I told him to do? And Janet goes, he's an actor. He's improvising. And he's like storming out of the room to go just be on the phone with her. And he hears the channel change, and now cartoons are on.
There's quite possibly one of my favorite Janet lines, though, in this conversation, because he's like, just get me a phone number. I have to, he's trying to stop his client from shooting himself in the foot even more. And she's like, how about I cut the power grid in Atlanta? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
He spins the chair around, and now we see Rusty. And this is where Russ starts demanding answers. Rusty goes, I don't know. I just showed up here. I saw popcorn. I wanted it. And now here I am. He says, I came for my plane. And now they go back and forth. That's my plane. No, it's my plane. No, my mother got it for me for Christmas. My mother got it for me for Christmas. And this is where Russ starts to realize what's happening. And the first question you can ask yourself is, how do you not recognize yourself as an adolescent? How do you not remember what you looked like?
Right.
But this movie goes on and on and on where he remembers virtually nothing about his adolescence. Because of the events of his 8th birthday, he has gone out of his way to forget as much as he can, up to and including what he looked like. Not only does it make sense for the character, but it's actually very sad at the same time. That you were that, and I understand why he was so grief-stricken and why the events of that day were so scarring for him, that he would forget everything about himself.
That I don't really buy, though. I mean, I understand that he's traumatized. They do establish that he sees a therapist and she is giving him medication because he wrote this whole thing off as a hallucination and just wanted more meds. He wasn't even freaked out by it because he knows the kind of stress that he puts himself under. So he was more focused on, this is just an inconvenience and I need to go to work, and just treated it as like, well, this is a byproduct of my life. Really thought nothing of it and doesn't bat an eyelash at the fact that he is hallucinating. And it's just, I need to push through. And I guess that's where you probably could make the argument of he's not going to necessarily take that beat and go, this kid looks familiar. But I mean, I just, even though he's been through some trauma, I just find it hard to believe that like you don't remember like what your reflection looked like staring back at you as a child.
But it makes sense because he didn't like the reflection that was looking back at him. And he goes so far as to make a reference to that later, but let's put a pin in that.
Fair enough. We get this sorry attempt at physical comedy here. I'm sorry. Russ is making a sandwich and he's just ignoring what he has written off as a hallucination. He takes it in the bathroom, screaming, "There's safety in sandwich." I am sorry, but physical comedy is not Bruce Willis's forte here.
No. Action, yes.
Heck yeah.
Physical
I'll give him
comedy,
that, but
it wasn't the best outing. But I did love how they realized who each other were, because it first starts with them talking about things that only they would know, like nicknames for family members. Then they start showing each other matching scars. Like, I thought all of that was excellent.
I agree, and I like that it didn't drag on where Russ is in disbelief for very long, or either of them are in disbelief for very long, for that matter. Like, they get right to the scars. Once he establishes, okay, you're not a hallucination, I have to figure out who you are, it gets there pretty quick, and there's not that trope of, this can't be happening. you know, it doesn't go. I really thought it was going to go on for like another scene or two before he accepted it. And once he does accept it, he wants Rusty to go away. So what does he do? Naturally, he calls Janet and has her meet him in an underground garage. Still tries to pass him off as a hallucination one more time. You know, there's that beat of, oh, you see him too? Janet does. She says there's a little boy standing there. And then Russ goes, okay, make him disappear. So oh my God, it's another great line. She does this bit where she puts her coat over Rusty like she's, you know, a magician, just to humor Russ. And then she goes, I'm sorry, I didn't wear my magic bra and panties today. She's, anything redeeming about this film for me is in Janet.
So they go to the house that they grew up in, the first house. And Russ doesn't remember it because he will tell Rusty, you're going to move 12 times. And that's a shock to Rusty because Rusty does not know what's going to happen. Of course, with his mother, with his father, he has no idea.
The reaction is great.
The reaction is great. But you get the wambulance line again. And I thought, okay, is this going to become a bit? They don't do it again after this, so I don't think it's necessary that it's not like his little catchphrase. It's not his little tick. He didn't like learn it from somebody else. It's just something he says twice, and that's the end of it. Like, if you're going to call back to it, it kind of needs to mean something, and it doesn't. But you warned me, and you were 100% right, that the kid, Rusty, is just loud for loud's sake. And it was one of the things that bothered you most upon the first viewing. And this is where it stands out worse than maybe any other point in the film. But once you get it in your head that he's just loud for the sake of, it sticks out like a sore thumb for the rest of the movie. And I don't know if it's that the sound mixing is bad or if you just become more in tune with it because he's exceptionally loud.
Because there's no nuance to it. It's so easy to play loud and angry, and there is no meaning. There's hardly any moments where it breathes for Rusty where he's sad. I mean, we do get a couple of them, but it's just so much reaction and not unpacking. And like, of course, Russ isn't going to realize how traumatic this is for Rusty because he's blocked it all out, but also because he's a terrible person and it's not going to occur to him. You know, all he cares about right now is this kid showed up in my life and I need to work. He's never going to realize, because he won't question himself, you know, this 8-year-old version of myself was just ripped out of his element. He must be scared. He doesn't know why this is happening. And 8 years old, that's the age when my mother passed away or when I knew my mother was sick. This is, you know, when everything took a really bad turn for me. How's he going to feel about it? You know, I mean, he doesn't have the mental capacity to ask any of those questions, but like you would think something in his mind clicks. 8 years old. This is when it all goes bad. And I don't love that it doesn't happen until much later in the film.
But I don't think it can happen until much later in the film. You come you come to a resolution too fast because then it's Back to the Future. They know immediately once Marty gets to 1955 and he goes and talks to Doc Brown, after the shock wears off, they know immediately we need to harness the lightning at the clock tower. Like, it's... And the whole film builds to that moment because that's the purpose of that, is I've got to get my parents back together because I've inadvertently changed time. So now the subplot becomes getting his parents back together when the real plot is trying to get him back to 1985 and figuring out how to harness the lightning because they don't have the plutonium. You can draw certain comparisons to Back to the Future because it's a time travel movie, but it is so different than Back to the... If you would have called out, we have 48 hours until my 8th birthday, so I'm going to spend the next 48 hours training you to get you back there. They don't go back there until they realize what the ultimate goal is. So
Right.
how would you have gotten them back 2 days from now if he called it out the entire time? Or would they have just gone back to the 60s and then he spends 2 days in the 60s trying to fix his younger self? Then you lose everything that happens with Amy and everything else. I think that the timing of it, I'm not sure that you could have done it earlier than you did.
Imagine my shock that you brought up Back to the Future. As
It's a time travel movie. Are you kidding me?
I know. Of course you did. Of course you're going to bring it up this week. But that's what I'm saying. Just for Russ's character, I understand where he's not going to take the beat to consider Rusty's feelings in any of this, but it just would have been nice if it dawned on him that this was a very pivotal age. And I mean, not that he's going to adjust and be more sensitive about it, but they do start to unpack things a little bit more. And this is where I do like where the movie sort of shifts, because it puts the power into Rusty's hands, because Rusty realizes that none of his dreams came true, essentially. So it starts with them going back to the house and he's calling out to Chester. And this is again where it's a great shift, and I appreciate it for the writing, but you lose it all in the performance here. And I don't like to blame it on a kid actor, so maybe part of this is the direction, but this is where so much of the yelling happens. They get back to the house. He's calling out to Chester because he always dreamed of growing up and having a dog named Chester, which obviously Russ, working so much, he's not going to have a pet. He can barely take care of himself. He can't have a relationship with a woman. Like, he's a loner. We've established this. So because there's so much yelling in this scene, Rusty's disappointment doesn't really land when he realizes that not only that none of the dreams come true, but like he hasn't grown up into the person that he hoped he would be. And just when you think there can't be any more yelling and it can't possibly get more annoying, Russ is trying to go to sleep and Rusty is singing John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt from outside because Russ won't even let him inside to sleep on a couch in this big house that I imagine would have a guest room. But no, he's outdoors with a blanket.
So what gets lost in here is, I think, the best line of the movie, actually, where Russ tells Rusty, this is what I do for a living. This is how successful I am. I have all this money. And Rusty goes, I don't have a wife and I don't have a dog, so I grow up to be a loser. And it's such a good line because ultimately and at the end of the day, he is a loser. He's financially very successful. But this guy, Russ, and I'm sort of taking the pin out of the grenade from earlier, the entire purpose of this movie, and you don't realize it until the end, is that to this day, the reason why he is so cruel is because he doesn't like himself.
Yeah.
He never did. He didn't like himself as a child. He really doesn't like himself as an adult. He takes it out on others and figured out a way to have a job where he could boss people around and be cruel to people and become stinking rich and exceedingly wealthy at the same time.
It is the perfect job, though, because it's so easy for him to do for other people, but he won't do it for himself. All he does is see flaws and tries to correct them, but he'll correct them, quote unquote, correct them for everyone else, but he will not look in the mirror when it comes to himself. And they do, it does come up again later when Rusty says, I'm a dogless, chickless loser. You know, Rusty sees Russ as he really is and completely cuts him off at the knees on the thing that he's most proud of, because since he doesn't like himself, to your point, the only thing he likes about himself is this job. And Rusty doesn't think it's so great. He just sees it as a disappointment. But
Right.
a lot of this just gets lost amongst the yelling.
I will agree there. Then he realizes this is Russ. When Rusty talks about how he gets bullied at school and he gets beat up by the other kids, he realizes, oh, that's why you're here. I have to teach you how to fight. So he introduces him to Kenny. And now, all the while, Amy has met him because Rusty showed up at breakfast and is banging on the window of the restaurant. And if I have a problem with Rusty as a character, he is such the stereotype of loud kid at this point. Loud and clumsy. No self-control whatsoever. Whether it be the volume of his voice, whether it be the things that he says, whether it be just the motion of existing in the world and where your hands are at all times, whether it's the food that's in front of him, he is the stereotype of sloppy, sticky, loud boy.
I feel like 8 years old is too old. I would expect this from a 5-year-old, but I feel like, and I think both ages are too old. I think it being the night before the 40th birthday, I feel like these are lessons that you learn earlier on to try and reset your life. And that actually brings up my comp film. And this is where it kind of dawned on me, because to your point, definitely by 8 years old should know better. So I was like, maybe if they did like 5 and even 35, I would be okay with it, because I feel like by 40, you should have had that aha moment about your crappy personality traits, you know? Midlife crisis, okay, fine. But I feel like this is a little bit late to have the realization that you need to course correct. But I think the reason they had it at this age is because of the comp film that I have in mind, which is 1997's Liar Liar. I think this was Disney's answer to Liar Liar, the PG version, because they could never pull off a film like that.
They could under Touchstone, but not under Disney.
Exactly.
I think that that's a reasonable comparison. I think you can draw a lot of comparisons to that. And certainly I did. And we know that Disney at times would not shy away from, oh, this was popular 3 years ago. Let's do that now. And then they remake a copy, or they try to make a copy of a film that was popular years prior.
Or you have these scripts, they get optioned around at different studios, and then one passes on them, the other studio makes it a hit. If you still have your copy of the script, because let's think about it, these were physical copies of the scripts that you would have to read. It could be like, well, let's do our version of this, and you use it as a blueprint.
So, while all of this is happening, Rusty's also introduced to Amy. And Russ tells her, that's my nephew. It's the nephew that we don't talk about because she knows all of his family members. Where's this one been? So he quickly lies out of that. We get to Kenny's. Kenny's training him how to box. And this is where Amy starts to realize there's something more to this. He's not his nephew, because they are way too similar in their mannerisms.
The boxing scene is pretty charming, though. I'll give it that.
It is.
As is Kenny's wedding.
Yeah, which we'll get to in just a moment here. They all get separated from Kenny's house because Amy takes Rusty to go have ice cream because, of course, she's going to take him to go get sticky and have ice cream.
Well, he's also been saying that Russ hasn't been feeding him.
Right.
Which is true. And Russ is like, well, he could stand to skip a meal.
Right. Which they kind of poke fun at his weight often throughout the movie, and I don't think you would see that in screenwriting nowadays. Is it cruel? You can make the case that it is, but I think because there is so much self-loathing in the character, I sort of feel that it's actually sort of necessary.
It seems horrible because he's just a child. You don't want to say unkind things to a child, but that's what it is. It's the self-loathing. It is Russ beating himself up. Because there's no doubt, it doesn't happen in the beginning when he first meets him and doesn't know who he is. This is him quite literally beating himself up.
Right. And I think that that's the brilliance in some of the decisions that they made. So they get separated. Russ goes to retrieve him from Amy's house, and Amy immediately says, he's your son. You lied. You're a deadbeat dad. You've been hiding an illegitimate child. And the two of them, meaning Russ and Rusty, start bickering and not whispering to each other. We got to tell her. We can't tell her. We got to tell her. She's not going to believe us. She'll believe us. No, she won't. It clicks with her as to what's happening. And of course, she faints. And she calls out that she's about to faint because she goes, I wish I was standing on a carpet right now. And then down she goes.
This is where, and I mean, I really don't like any of the yelling, but I feel like they sort of wrote themselves into a corner with it because Russ has gone completely out of his way to become everything that he was not when he was Rusty. You still need traces of the person that you were to buy the fact that this is who you grew up into. They did it really well with the boxing and the mannerisms, but we still needed a thread besides the scars that we saw, besides the mannerisms. You need some kind of connective tissue with the personality trait to believe that this is who Rusty grows up to be. So I think that's why whenever Rusty yelled, Russ will just yell back. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that he's ill-equipped and doesn't know how to parent a child. It's just that that's who he is. And he never really got parented, so he wouldn't know better.
I love, too, that Rusty calls out while they're talking. Amy and Russ are talking about what this is, how they can fix it. Rusty's just flipping through the channels, and he goes 99 channels, which is mind-blowing for a kid that's fresh out of the 60s, living off an antenna. Goes 99 channels and there's nothing on. It is still so relatable. And it's almost like they cue it up because Amy says, you're adorable. And Russ goes, I am. And she's like, he is. Which, is her kind of backtracking because I think she meant both of them are. And he's like, look at him. He's a slob. And almost on command, he knocks over his juice that he's drinking onto the floor. Again, this is just Sticky Kid. I don't think you necessarily needed to keep leaning into Sticky Kid, but it sort of makes sense for the self-loathing.
Well, they do it at the wedding too. And this is where I'm saying 8 is way too old because he's just in the cake.
Yeah, he's just
just barehanding the cake. No, thank you.
Yeah, old enough to know better. And then Amy's there because now he's made, oh, look, I got sticky all over me. and Amy, because that's what it is. And then Amy's like, oh, just take your jacket and throw it under the table. Nobody will ever know.
If you've ever wondered what it is like to walk through one of the theme parks with Sean Croft, there it is.
Yeah. It's the truth.
That's why I'm laughing, because that just got so real for a second.
It's the truth.
After the sticky, though, there is a really charming beat because Amy has been so kind to Rusty. And I guess he's sort of seeing into the future a little bit. He's taking a liking to her. And I think it's a little
I know
creepy
I've
in
got
some
this
ways.
cringe, and I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, part of it's charming, the fact that he's gravitating towards a mother figure, right? That he obviously he doesn't know that he's not going to have yet. But he proposes to her because he recognizes that, like, this is who his adult self should be with. And the cringe part comes from the fact that she is going to say yes, because they did set that up in the dinner scene when, you know, she's listing out all of Russ's bad qualities. And then she's like, I see the child in you, which I don't think tracks at all. But she's like, I see the childlike qualities, and then I fall in love with you all over again, or something to that effect. So now, because she literally sees the child in him in front of her, she's about to say yes. And then the tape comes back into play because it's playing at the bar at the wedding venue.
And Rusty is just giggling, laughing incessantly.
That's how she sees it. And she realizes that Russ went back in the dumpster, took the tape, and still prioritized his client over doing the right thing and not helping the client. Basically, he's kind of aiding and abetting a criminal in some way. I mean, like, yes, he is rehabbing the reputation, but he hasn't done anything to hold this man accountable that he's going to keep his word and set up the camp and use the funds where they're supposed to be allocated.
But it's not his responsibility to do that.
And that's what Amy's biggest problem is that she understands the job, but she doesn't understand how he can't turn a blind eye. So anyway, where I'm going with all of this is that this is the moment she breaks down, and Russ is asking her, well, he blows up at Rusty and he's like, what are you doing? Because I guess if she had said yes to Rusty, they would be engaged now. And then Amy starts bantering with Russ. Don't you want to know what I was going to say? And then finally he gets it out of her, but now she's seen the tape. So she starts crying and she says, do you know what the saddest part is? We would have been great. Woman, what has this man done to you that was so wonderful to make you believe that you would have been great together and he would make you happy? Because all he is right now is your employer. He is cutting your paychecks and he is nasty to you. There is absolutely no basis for her to make that statement. The saddest part in actuality is that Rusty is the best part of Rust. And that's not going to make a good husband.
No, but I think that she's been convinced the whole time that she can change him. And perhaps, I hate to say it because he's so cruel in calling her stupid early in the movie, but maybe there's a part of what he said, not calling her stupid per se, but the fact that she's, oh, whimsy, oh, look at the moon. Maybe part of what he said was accurate, and she knows it. She secretly knows it. That she's, like, almost too good for her own good, and he put her on the carpet for it.
Well, she's also about 10 years younger than him, because they call that out, too, that she's not even 30 yet.
But I'm saying, is this something where she almost took it up, like, as a challenge? Like, I can change you, I will change you.
Maybe.
And I think because she's seen Rusty, she knows what's in there, and I think that's what she's grasping towards. And I think the line of "we could have been great" means if I could have changed you, which, to your point, she doesn't do anything, right? We know that. By the end of the film, when he does change, it's completely independent of her.
Thank goodness.
Which I think we needed, frankly.
Yeah.
I agree there. I think the "we could have been great" is just her saying, if the childlike qualities would come out in you and match the childlike qualities that I've never let go of, we could be great together.
That's fair. I will give you that one.
So now we have the two of them, Russ and Rusty, back at the house. And Rusty is now allowed to sleep inside on the couch. And they start talking about, we need to fix each other. You need to fix me so I don't get bullied at school, and I need to fix you so that you're not such an awful human being. And he tucks him in, and he's got the news on, and he sees Deirdre, the anchor from the airplane.
I loved that they bring her back around.
And that she did cut her hair, she did trim her nails, and she does say y'all with a smile. So she listened to everything that he told her to do other than putting the contacts in and changing her eye color. And he goes to talk to her, and they go out for coffee, and he tells her everything that's going on. And she doesn't question it.
No.
She never thinks he's out of his mind. She talks about what it would be like if she had run into her younger self. I love that they call back to this. I love that she listened, and I love that they are there for each other again.
Me too. You think that she's going to be such a one-off character, especially because everybody else that he encounters in that opening montage, you think that's just it. It's just a montage of people to establish that he's a jerk. I love that they bring it full circle and that he seeks her out for advice now, because she does say, I'll owe you, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
We're going to find out how he would mutually benefit from this. This is how. And she gets right to the heart of it, is that he's not the reason this happened is not so that he can fix Rusty, so Rusty becomes this version of him. Rusty's the one that's there to help, so that they can redeem this man. I'm sorry to say, though, he has more chemistry with Deirdre than he does with Amy.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. So now Russ and Rusty, they start walking around town, and Rusty is calling things out that have recently happened in his life that Russ has forgotten about. So with Rusty's help, he starts to remember some of the events of his childhood. And they're driving around town, and Rusty starts to vent to Russ about how he lost his former best friend. Because his former best friend now hangs out with bullies like Vince, and he throws rocks at him. And how the thing that Rusty is upset about the most is how cruel they are to animals. And as soon as he says that, Russ says, they're really mean to a 3-legged dog named Tripod. And he starts to call back all of the things that happen with Vince. And they drive through a tunnel, which I'm pretty sure is Griffith Observatory.
Yeah, I think it's the Roger Rabbit tunnel.
Which we've seen in Roger Rabbit, in Back to the Future. It has been used in so many movies that he starts to call back, yeah, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this. They exit the tunnel in one of the best shots of the movie. They exit the tunnel, the red plane is flying above them. The Porsche from the 90s is now a Porsche from the 60s. They're back in the 60s. Russ's clothes have changed.
Sweater vest.
Yeah, the cardigan. Like, it's so brilliant. The time travel element there is spectacular.
I also like how the plane has been a through line throughout this entire film, not just with the toy, but, we were talking about it. We saw it in the opening credits. Then when he's back in LA, it swoops right over his head. Like, it's been leaving signs the entire time. And you think it's sort of arbitrary, but it does obviously come back into play later. Like, it's basically the 70-year-old version of Russ saying, hey, look up, stop and smell the roses once in a while. Get out of your own head.
And now that we are here, this is where Russ remembers, this is the day where my life is going to change.
But now he has the tools because Rusty can fight because Kenny showed him how to box.
Right.
So it's a little bit of the skill that he's got. It's a lot more of the confidence that he's got now. Seeing the firecrackers around the dog's neck, though, like, that's a little too much for me. Like, they really went for it.
Well, this is the thing.
They're not lit, but
it's a very upsetting thing to see. But, when I was a kid, now, there were bullies in school, and to my knowledge, they never actually killed anybody's pet, but they would threaten to do it. I mean, I had kids that were bullies in school that would threaten to kill our dog, would threaten to kill the neighbor's cat. Some kids, bad kids are just bad kids. So I think this is relatable.
No, bad kids are bad kids. Sociopaths threaten to kill pets.
Well,
That's where it starts.
I think, and these kids, these bully kids, have justified it in their mind as a mercy killing. They're like, have you ever seen it run? It's pathetic. It's useless. Just put it out of its misery. Like, to that, like, that's how they're justifying their behavior. Yeah, it's a sad visual to see this dog tied up with firecrackers around its neck. But, like, it's harsh in that you know it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen now. It happened 32 years ago when Rusty couldn't defend himself. And if you think about it, this is what the whole story about I travel too much for work, that's why I don't have a dog, is all BS. This is why he doesn't have a dog.
It's the trauma because they don't say it explicitly, though, that he didn't
have to, though.
save him. Yeah, he just says, I couldn't get back up.
Right.
And then
when he says, I can't take care of a dog, he's calling back to this moment.
Okay, yeah.
And
I didn't catch that.
Don't,
yeah.
And I'm glad that they don't make it over the... Like, that would have been sloppy screenwriting and be like, now this is why we don't have Chester.
No, I agree with you, but I do think that this is where it gets a little muddy because they haven't necessarily spelled out the Back to the Future rules where if you change one thing about this, it will reset the rest of your life, because Russ tells him, you're going to win today, but they're still going to bully you. This is still going to happen. So that's where I also sort of got confused if the dog made it or not.
Right. And obviously we know the dog makes it because we watch as he releases the dog.
I mean, the first time it happened.
No, the first time I don't know.
So this was resetting this was changing the future, essentially.
What it was doing was it's changing the future, but not in a Back to the Future sort of way, which I think was great because then you're just pulling too much from Back to the Future. It changes the fact that he no longer has the trauma of watching this dog literally get blown apart. It changes his future in that he's able to win that fight.
Yes.
He's still going to get picked on. He's still going to get bullied. But now it's Vince doing it in a vengeful way. But instead of just being the victim, now he has the tools to defend himself. And that's the change that he has.
No, and I also like that it wasn't a miraculous 180 where it's like, now you're never going to get picked on again.
Right.
It's still, no, they're going to put you down and you're going to have to pull yourself by your bootstraps every single day and have the mental fortitude to get through this. And that's where you do see the path from Rusty to Russ becoming who he is.
Yeah.
Where this does also sort of get buried is that you see the mother come to pick him up after the fight, and she's clearly ill. They double down on it once she gets him home, and Dad gets home from work and finds out what's been happening all day, and he blows up, and you shouldn't be out of the house. The doctor said, don't go anywhere. You're too sick for this. And now Rusty comes to the realization, well, the dad really lays into him. He is so horribly cruel where it almost makes it seem less cruel. That first scene where we meet the dad, where Russ refuses to help him move. It's like, okay, now we see why you don't have this good relationship. It seems very extreme in the beginning because they've just set up what a jerk Russ is. And you sympathize with the elderly man who's being ignored by his son. But now it's like, okay, kind of get it.
Yeah. And earlier on in the film, we talked about the ambulance when the kid is just wailing in the car. It is some of the worst acted fake crying that I've ever seen. But in this scene, he's crying for real.
Mm.
And he is so good.
Yeah.
And he is so convincing. I'm not sure why he couldn't do that earlier. I'm not sure if they tried to make it, like, really funny earlier. But it almost seems like it's not two different actors. It's the same actor. We'll talk about the cast in a few minutes. But it almost seems like before acting school, after acting school. like, he's so much better by the end of the film.
I think because in the earlier parts, you're trying to play it for comedy and it has to grate on Russ a little bit. But because now you're going to have Russ cry as well, you really needed to get the emotion out. And if it was fake, you can't have the kid fake crying against Bruce Willis, real crying. The entire thing would just fall apart. So I think this was part of Spencer Breslin having to rise to the occasion here. Or maybe he was instructed not to really cry and hold it for this.
Yeah. This is a really rough scene. His father is shaking him, telling him, stop crying, be a man, grow up, and tells him, you're killing her. And what's great about this is now you know why, to your point, why Russ wants nothing to do with his father. You now know why Russ is the way he is. Russ is the way he is because he self-loathed himself and his father didn't help. There is so much layered here in the mentality that is Russ. All of it gets fleshed out here. And I think that what that does successfully, I think it absolves Russ of a lot of his sins.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get there, but I'm glad that we didn't do it earlier. I think you needed all of this time. I think it's of course poetic that the first time he's cried since his 8th birthday is on his 8th birthday because they're together. I think Bruce Willis does an amazing job carrying the scene. I think that Spencer Breslin does a great job playing off of him, and he has to say, your mom is going to die before your next birthday. And the saddest part is Rusty, taking what his father just said as scribe, goes, did I do it?
Yeah.
And he has to tell him no. And then he's got to tell him, and you have to understand why dad is treating you this way.
Yes.
It's because, and I love that he does this because he also, now that he's remembered his childhood that he wanted so desperately to forget, he has to admit that while it was wrong at the time, he understands why his father treated him the way that he did, because dad's scared because he doesn't know what he's going to do without mom. And that's why you move so many times. That's why he's so impulsive, and that's why he treats you the way that he does, because dad doesn't know how to handle it.
And doesn't know, not just without her, he's scared to lose her, but also doesn't know how to parent, obviously.
Right.
It's such a great breakthrough moment for the character. It really is. This is a really, really great scene.
So now we get back to the Skyway Diner, or Skyview Diner.
Because it's their birthday.
Because it's their birthday.
This is their birthday dinner. And Russ is eating like Rusty, which I thought was really cute.
Yeah. And then a dog comes up right to Rusty. Rusty pets him. He gets called away. Chester, come on, let's go. And they look at each other and they're like, did you just hear what he called the dog? Which you didn't need that line. But they say
we
it
would have
anyway.
known. We would have got it.
They go outside and they see the 70-year-old Russ, who is now a pilot, married, with a family, with Amy, with Chester. And he admits that he did all of this. I love the fact that he orchestrated the whole thing, and he didn't orchestrate all of this to save the 7-year-old. He did this to save the 39-year-old.
Yeah.
It's so important that they did this, and that it wasn't, I needed you guys to help each other. It's, no, I needed to save you. Because this is what your life will become down the line once we can fix you.
If you even make it to 70 with the amount of stress he's putting on himself.
Well, obviously we know that he's going to. And there's a lot of sadness. There's sadness in the 25 years ago, there's sadness in the scene, but it's like a heartwarming sadness where you get a lump in your throat seeing them age together. It's especially difficult to watch now because Bruce Willis is 70 years old. Bruce Willis has, he's getting towards the end of his life. He's battling this dementia. He's not well. So you see 70-year-old Russ living out his dreams of joy and happiness. And you see 70-year-old Bruce Willis, who still has his family around him, and he's still smiling in all of his pictures, but you know that he very silently, because at this point he's lost the ability to speak, but he's fully aware, I think, of what's going on, that there is an internal struggle where 70-year-old Russ is able to live out his golden years, but the actor who plays him isn't. And I think that there's an inadvertent sadness where if the film hasn't aged well, that's where it hasn't aged well. But that's not a fault of the film. It's not dated. It's just inadvertently very sad all of these years later.
No, because there is a really, really great message here that it's never too late to turn it around. So even though I do think that both the child and the adult, the ages aren't the best for this film, this is where turning 40 does sort of work. When you're trying to deliver that message. And then, of course, Rusty disappears. He goes back to his own timeline. And Russ is left to make good with the people that he has mistreated. So he sends Janet to Hawaii, which we love. He had her buy the plane tickets as if they were for him. And then she comes over to the house and he changes the name right in front of her so that her and her husband, who he has also woken up at 3:00 in the morning many a time, can go on a vacation. And then he brings a puppy over to Amy's house. Here's what I bump on. It's a golden retriever. I mean, I know that Walt is going to live forever, but if this is Chester and we have met the 70-year-old version of Russ, that makes Chester 30 years old.
I don't think it's meant to be Chester. I think it's just meant to be
it's
the
like
start.
An engagement ring.
Yeah.
Better than an engagement ring. It's a puppy.
I think that Chester becomes the dog he's had when he's fulfilled all of his goals. When he has his life as he wants it. Part of having his life the way he dreamed, it's sort of a conclusion to the story. Chester's a part of that. He's not there quite yet, so I don't think this is
transition.
Chester.
Okay. They live forever.
No, because I thought the same thing. Like, that's gonna hurt the timeline, but I don't think that was ultimately what they were trying to do there. Obviously, with it being a timeline, obviously with it being a Disney film, there's an awful lot of things that you could be on the lookout for, and maybe some things that stood out to you. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek-and-find card game that you can play in your favorite parks, whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, and more. Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. So, I spotted something that I think is an error in editing. Specifically talking about the Larry King scene, where we get Rusty for the first time. There are shots where you see Russ watching Larry King. It's very, very dark. You get cut to Janet watching Larry King, and it's very, very dark in the office. But we know that the office has natural light because we've seen the office in the morning. So, suffice to say, and because Larry King came on at night, even though it's the West Coast, we are led to believe that it is the nighttime.
Yes.
Dark backgrounds, dark office. When Russ goes into the kitchen to continue venting to Janet on the phone, you see clear daylight out of the window. And when he walks back to go speak to Rusty, because Rusty's changed the channel, there's now daylight outside the window. There was no daylight earlier.
Yeah, I did notice that. It's very jarring because at first, and I mean, I don't remember what time Larry King aired. I think it was prime time. So would it have been like 8 o'clock East Coast?
It was 8. Certainly by 9 o'clock he was on.
Which puts you around 5-6 o'clock. I'll buy the notion that it's sunset, and maybe, because it happens here too, where like depending on what angle the sun is coming in, certain rooms are going to be darker than others as it is setting. Okay, fine. But to clearly establish that it is night by cutting to the office and having it be completely dark, I think that's what's even more jarring than seeing the light in the house, because it's two different rooms. If it was the same room, I would have more of an issue. But because he's passing through the kitchen and into this like den area that he has, it's not awful, but it is a little bit jarring. For me, we're going to talk about the cast in a second here, but there are a few actors who were just starting out that we see make appearances through this film. And then we get a pretty amazing cameo. So on the plane, the flight attendant checks in with Russ. That is Alex Barretto, who started out as an actress, is now a producer. She actually just had a film go to Sundance starring Karen Gillan, which I've been wanting to see, and it's on the list. We have to check it out because I love Karen Gillan. But she is now better known as Mrs. Ryder Strong, and the reason that we couldn't go get a beer with him, but that's another story for another day. We also get Melissa McCarthy, who is the diner waitress, and I am thoroughly convinced she got this because of her being Suki St. James in Gilmore Girls. It's just such a natural role for her. So those aren't cameos per se, even though they are small parts, because they were still just sort of starting out. The cameo is in the breakfast scene where Rusty shows up at the restaurant and he's knocking on the window. Matthew Perry and Bruce Willis got to be very good friends. So the tech company startup that he's trying to convince to change his image because he's about to blow up and be on the cover of Forbes and everything, under all of that hair is in fact Matthew Perry. I
knew it was a cameo. It had to be, because they were focusing too much on him, but I couldn't figure out who it is. That's a great catch. All right, let's talk about our cast here, starting with Bruce Willis, who plays Russ. Bruce Willis was cast in this. It was the third and final film that he had on his Disney contract. So apparently what had happened was, and if I had, maybe I don't think I've told this story before. If I have, I guess it bears repeating. He had a romantic comedy that he was doing under Touchstone. And about 20, it was him and Maura Tierney, actually, were doing this rom-com. And apparently they got 20 days into filming, and he wanted to fire and did fire like the entire crew. And so the film dissolved, and Disney didn't try to finish the film because they found that it was just too difficult to make that film with him. So instead of suing each other, they settled on, you're going to do 3 films for us. Those 3 films were Armageddon,
of course,
The Sixth Sense,
right,
and this one.
So now we've completed the trifecta.
So we've
Oh, well, no, we haven't done Armageddon yet.
We haven't done Armageddon on the show, but this was him concluding his Disney contract. That was how he got in here. But John Turtelbaum, who directed the film, he did want Bruce Willis for this film because he thought, I need somebody. I think his exact words were, I need somebody who can act like a jerk but has the movie star quality where you still like him. And I think that was perfect casting. I also thought Bruce Willis was just really good all around. Yes, the physical comedy was not his best, but when he started to blow up and explode, like, that all made sense. Where you needed it to be very heavy, he carried that very well. My issues aren't with Bruce Willis. The issues that I have are with the character where, as I said before, and I think it bears repeating, him being so hard on Russ because he secretly despises himself is great screenwriting. But the fact that he is cruel to everybody else for the sake of cruelty does make the character borderline dislikable. It makes sense by the end. and the timing makes sense. So I guess, like, in a way, it's not really a critique, because had you done it earlier, I don't think it would have worked as well. You just need to know going into this that the character has redeeming qualities, and you spend way too much time believing he doesn't. So where it's a flaw, maybe it actually is very good screenwriting.
Before I get into Bruce Willis, because you're bringing up the screenwriting, I think it is worth noting that this was written by Audrey Wells. And, you know, even though it's not a romantic comedy per se, just by virtue of having Amy's character, and because Rusty softens Russ so much, I think it is clear that this does have sort of a woman's touch to it to soften such a hardened guy. And you brought up the director too, John Turteltaub, who did While You Were Sleeping and National Treasure. So quite the range.
Yeah. And a lot with Disney.
And I'm surprised it doesn't feel like more of a rom-com because of While You Were Sleeping.
And he did Cool Runnings too, I think.
Yes. That's his most notable Disney film, I think. But, you know, because he obviously had a long-standing relationship with Disney, it's easy to see why he got this here. But like I said, I don't know who to critique. Was it the director or was it the actor as far as all of the yelling? Because that's like my big takeaway from this, was that Russ was just a jerk and he yells a lot. But it's that scene where he breaks it to Rusty that the mother's going to die. I mean, to see this man like fully weep, it redeems everything else as far as not necessarily nailing the physical comedy. And it definitely, you know, as far as the actor goes, but it also definitely is the redemption arc for the character. But to me, the best bit of this performance is 70-year-old Russ, where he's just got that twinkle in his eye, seeing his younger self. It's just such a charming moment. But yeah, I mean, for as much as I find fault with, I really can't picture anybody other than Bruce Willis in this role.
Right. Thinking back on some of the leading men at the time, like, the immediate reaction is, oh, Jim Carrey, because he did it in Liar Liar, and then he does it again in Yes Man. But I don't think, and nothing against Jim Carrey, he's a very good actor, but I don't know that he could have pulled off the 70-year-old.
I don't think he could have pulled off mean like he does in Liar Liar, but it's still goofy. The only other person that kind of came to mind was maybe Travolta, but I don't know that he'd be able to get that mean either.
Robin Williams. He probably could have.
Ooh, yeah.
But Bruce Willis, with all that said, was perfect casting for this film. Then you have Spencer Breslin, who plays Rusty. The entire thing that redeems him is that final scene where they're crying together on his 8th birthday. Otherwise, and it's not Spencer Breslin's fault, he is just loud and obnoxious.
And I think that does fall back to direction, not him, because he actually did win a Young Artist Award for Best Performance in a Feature Film for a child 10 or under for this. But it's that scene. It's the mother scene that really seals the deal. Because otherwise, like I said, there's just not, and it's not fair to criticize a child and saying, well, your performance wasn't nuanced enough, especially because there are people that clearly thought that it was, that he won an award for it. But I think that does kind of pinpoint where the yelling came from, is that it probably was in the direction, because you see him handle some really serious material with the crying. So this may not have necessarily been a choice. Emily
Mortimer plays Amy. She's done quite a bit with Disney. She was in Cars 2 as Holly Shiftwell. You may recognize her more as the older Jane Banks from Mary Poppins Returns. She is, I think, in this film, just a charmer.
Yeah.
I think she's awesome. I loved her in this film. I thought that she was great casting. The issue that I have is the same issue I'm sure you have, which is that she kept going back to someone that was verbally abusive time after time after time in a relationship that, as you said, is a little undefined. I don't think it's quite as undefined as you felt that it was, but be that as it may, she calls herself out on the fact that she can't stay away and she doesn't really know why. So I think that they could have just cleaned up the screenwriting a little bit here. There needs to be a defined reason why she keeps going back other than her paycheck, because she seems comparable enough, or she seems competent enough to go get another job. Doesn't seem like she needs this one. So they just needed to write one more thing in where there was something redeeming that she kept going back for.
Right, and that's where it's kind of where you bump on it a little bit, because the screenwriter handled it so well, giving you a character that grounds the film with her maternal instinct and with being the voice of reason for older Russ. And, you know, as I said, there's clearly a woman's touch in the screenwriting, but that's the only part of it. And I'm wondering if maybe there's a scene or two that got cut where you did develop her to be a stronger character a little bit more, because I can't imagine that you could handle the material that well, but then also be so anti-feminist.
Lily Tomlin plays Janet. We're in agreement. Best character in the film.
Hands down. I can't think of anybody who would have been better in this role. She just absolutely nails it. And this is one of those things that I love about doing this podcast, where we find these gems of characters that we never knew existed buried in these Disney movies that we've never seen before. Like, you never know where you're going to find your next favorite Disney character.
That might have to be an episode down the road someday. Like a top 10 best hidden character.
Oh, I like that. I really like that.
Maybe for down the road. Maybe when we're faced with having to do, like, well, we could do Jefferson in Paris, which nobody has ever seen, including those who made the film. Or we could do this. People like top 10s. Let's talk about maybe another character that ends up on that list, and that is Deirdre, and she is played by Jean Smart.
I mean, I love Jean Smart. She just nails this in every facet. And like I said, I mean, aside from the fact that she's beautiful and she's always been typecast in that way as somebody who exudes sexiness, she didn't even have to do it this time. But she had more chemistry than the person who's supposed to be the leading lady.
Yeah. Maybe there was something that, I don't know, maybe in an earlier version, that was somebody that he was supposed to end up with. I have no idea. But you're right. They had better chemistry than him and Amy. But yeah, she was great. As was Chi McBride. Chi McBride again.
Yeah.
Again, all these years, never talked about Chi McBride on this show. And now, 2 of the last 3 weeks he's been brought up?
Yeah.
Right? He plays Kenny. He's just so good. It's a small part, but he is so good. He's another charmer.
Yeah.
His lines are hysterical. I love how he says, you don't need to teach this kid how to box. You need to teach him how to street fight.
Yeah.
And something that I think they did miss out on was when Rusty is on top of Russ and he's pummeling him, and Kenny goes, show him that WWF leg lock, and Russ puts him in it. I thought that that's what Rusty was going to do to Vince when he said, say uncle, and Vince wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I thought he'd put him in the leg lock, and then it would have been perfect because he would have taken all the lessons he learned, but he didn't. But yeah, Chi McBride was just really, really good.
Maybe he's holding the leg lock for a future fight. He's just keeping that bullet in the chamber.
Well, we know that he's going to get bullied every day through grade school and into high school.
Yeah, I agree with you. Chi McBride is great, though. I love that we didn't just get that boxing scene, that Kenny did have a bigger arc as far as having a wedding, because if it was just that boxing scene, I would have been like, man, I want more of this character. So it was great to see how that all played out.
I love that when Rusty tackles Russ, Kenny goes, come on, little Tyson.
Yeah.
That was a really, really good line that I think kind of gets lost a little bit. Final thoughts on Disney's The Kid. I will go first because I think I can be kind of brief on this. I think that this movie does separate itself from other time travel films, but I think that it takes the best parts of Back to the Future, and here's the other one I teased earlier, and I think that it pulls from this more than Back to the Future. A Christmas Carol. I think it pulls the best elements from both of those movies, or both of those stories, I should say, but it makes it its own without taking too much from them. It doesn't just take the best parts and run with it. It takes the elements that work, and it does it in its own way. I think that the movie gets much better on rewatch. I think that the movie does have rewatchability. And I think the more that you watch it, the more that you realize that this character, specifically Russ, is so horrendous to everybody. But there's an underlying reason for it, and it gets paid off at the end. I think that that is what will keep you coming back for more. I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought that I was going to.
You enjoyed it about as much as I thought you were going to. Once I realized, like, I think the first time I watched it, I was in a mood because I definitely liked it more the second time around. But man, all that yelling is grating. Christmas Carol is such a great comparison, though. I can't believe I didn't see that. You're absolutely right about that. I think for me, though, this is one of those instances where the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. Because I don't think that this is a great movie. It's good. It's decent. Perfect for a family movie night. Because I think that there's something that all ages can definitely pick out and enjoy. For the adults, it's like going back and watching like a Boy Meets World or something where you're looking at it with different eyes, and you'll identify more with the parents and Feeney versus watching it when you were 13 and identifying with Corey and Sean.
Yeah, I think it'll transcend generations.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've never seen it, definitely worth a watch in that regard, even if you're not necessarily, the target demo. But I definitely think there's enough that kids can appreciate too, through Rusty's character and through scenes like the boxing, and maybe they'll find some of the stickiness stuff funny. Definitely worth a look. But just for me, I found individual moments and individual scenes better than the story as a whole. Like, there are things that I absolutely found funny, mostly through Janet. There are the emotional beats that I appreciated, that I thought were really, really charming. But at the end of the day, when you land the plane, I'm not just like, my socks aren't knocked off by it,
Right. Well, we want to know what you have to say about Disney's The Kid. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first, a quick break. Now that we live in Florida and spend a lot more time in Disney World, we love to share our park experiences with you, especially in our dockside chats. However, telling you about our personal experience during a park day while sipping on a margarita is not the same thing as getting travel advice, which is why we are so happy to be partnered with our good friend Kelly at KMV Travel. You know Kelly from our reviews of Thor Ragnarok and Rogue One, and she has recently launched her own boutique travel company providing complimentary assistance with vacation planning. If you're thinking about booking a trip to Disney, you can visit kmvtravel.com and request Jackie as your travel advisor. We promise she will help with more than where to find the best margaritas.
Hey everyone, this is Brian down here in South Florida. I'm about 2 hours south of Disney, and when it comes to planning vacations, Jackie's the way to go. When it came to booking my family vacation for my 2-year-old daughter and my wife, like everybody, I immediately went to the internet, started scouting prices. Just out of curiosity, I reached out to Jackie. She mentioned she was booking vacations for many people. So I gave her my list, my itinerary. She looked it over, and when she came back to me, she gave me her recommendations in regards to the parks. However, she also had new pricing associated with it. I've learned that going on my own doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be getting the best pricing. On top of that, it was stress-free, so all my vacations in the future are going to be through her because I don't have to think about it. She plans it. I give her some information in regards to what I want to do and create the itinerary for me. She's a market expert. She advised on which rides to attack first, which restaurants I should schedule on what day, and how to properly allocate my time to maximize my vacation. It was an amazing process. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
The final verse to It's a Small World that Richard Sherman had previously written is being added to the attraction, and that will make its Disney Parks debut on July 17th of this year.
I like that we're getting this, especially for Disneyland, being that they're celebrating the 70th. I just find it so ironic that this verse is supposed to be so much about unity, written by someone who couldn't get along with their brother most of their life. And do you feel like this is kind of sticking it to Robert a little bit? Because he had the opportunity to write it and get it into the ride when Robert didn't.
No, I don't think that that's it at all. I just don't understand why they waited until after both of them were gone to put it in. Like, were you sitting on this until the 70th intentionally? Like, did you have the foresight to do that? I think probably not. So why not allow him to, like, enjoy Richard Sherman, right? Yeah. Why not allow him to enjoy the final verse of that iconic song and attraction in his lifetime? This is like when guys get posthumously, like, inducted into the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Like, it's great that they're there, but they don't know that. I mean, somewhere they know that they're there, but they're like, they don't get to physically attend a ceremony. Like, I just wish that they would have maybe done this, I don't know, 2 years ago, and he could have seen it come to fruition.
Yeah, because they did have him, you know, go play Walt's piano. I don't want to say one last time, because I don't think that was the intent. I don't think that they knew it was the last time when it happened. But especially for Disney too, like, you don't want the PR opportunities of, you know, Richard Sherman sitting in the boat all happy and going through the ride and listening to his new verse.
Yeah,
and,
really.
You know, you get a reel, a TikTok, and whatever else out of that.
Well, that is coming in July.
Speaking of reels and TikToks, we also got a first look at the Bark and Barrel over at Magic Kingdom. It is not concept art. The Imagineers took us into what they've done so far, and oh my goodness, just bury me there.
I'm excited to see it when it finally opens. But we are celebrating a little bit of Christmas in July, aren't we? Because holidays at Walt Disney World have been announced, running from November 14th through December 31st. The International Festival of the Holidays at Epcot was announced. However, we don't have dates or narrators for the Candlelight Processional just yet. They've also announced dates for Jollywood and for Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party happening over at Hollywood Studios and at the Magic Kingdom. However, tickets are not on sale just yet.
Yes, they're going to go on sale next week. First to Disney Resort guests on July 16th for Very Merry, and then they'll go on sale to the general public after that.
Well, it's an exciting time of the year, and hopefully there are some people out there that can enjoy Walt Disney World at the holidays this year. And maybe now you have the opportunity to build it into your vacation.
Absolutely. It's also an expensive time of year for us. We've got all the Christmas stuff coming out, and then Universal just put up the passes for Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah, it's about to be an expensive afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, in spite of the fact that this is about to become an expensive afternoon. But there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.